This meeting.
Okay.
Okay, now we're good. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is the Legislative Committee for the State Building Code Council. I'm Todd Byerther. It's the pleasure to serve as chair for the council. I guess we can take roll to start out, please.
Okay.
Annette, are you going to do it?
Yep, I got it.
Great. I'm a
So,
lucky guy.
Todd Byerther,
Here.
Tony Doan,
Present.
Damon Doyle, Shell Anderson. I think he declined. Corey Wilker,
Here.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Micah Chappelle,
Present.
and Representative Alex Ramel.
I'm here.
Welcome. Okay. Thank you, Annette. Let's give an opportunity. Anyone from the public like to be recognized? Okay. Thought I saw Andrea floating there, but if not, then we will go straight into a review and approve the agenda. Can we hear a motion to approve, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Tony and Jay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? So approved. Okay. Review and approve minutes from a couple of years ago. Okay. Yes, I think we hear a motion. We'll just take them all as a batch, if that's okay. We hear a motion to approve all 5 meeting minutes, February 4th and January 28th from 2022, March 26th, March 12th, and March 5th from 2021.
This is Corey, so moved.
Second, Tony.
Thank you, Corey and Tony. Any discussion on those? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay, thank you. So approved. Okay, legislative update. So for those of you that have not been on this committee before, first of all, welcome. This is our weekly opportunity as a committee to go. The main topic here is to go through the update prepared by staff. So I'll hand it over to Stoyan. Just as a reminder, you know, this body really is to inform. We meet weekly during session, obviously, because it moves so quickly. And really we have to bring anything forward to the council if we were to take action anyway. So but since we have a meeting next week, this is relevant. So let's just jump right in. If Stoyan, if you're willing to lead, please.
So before I start with my log, so the good thing is we have the council meeting next week. And as Todd said, this committee doesn't really make, you know, decisions, but at the same time, if the committee wants to, you know, go forward and ask the council to approve whatever it is, you know, taking position on a bill or authorizing somebody to testify in a particular bills, that's also possible. The other thing I want to say is that, you know, I will show you a summary of the bills. I don't know if you see this on the screen. I think you do. Can you see this moving back and forth? Okay, so I didn't post it. It's really a working document. I will do my best to catch up with the bills and send you the summary earlier or post it on the website. But you know, keep in mind that it's a working document and bills are coming, especially the first 2 weeks, and I'll catch up. But what you will see on this summary, I will have links for you so you can click on the link and review, you know, the bill, how it's going. I also will have some, you know, summary what the bill is about. I have the sponsors, the title, again, you know, links to the bill, links to the website, and you'll see I have like impact on the state building code council, fiscal impact, impact on stakeholders. So keep in mind that I do this analysis for DES. I have the state building code council in mind, but whatever you see here, you consider it SBCC staff opinion. For difficult bills, I reach out to different council members and, you know, in order to get some feedback, but this summary shouldn't be considered state building code council opinion. That's important.
Stoyan, I was thinking before we jump in, often during session, it's hard for our elected officials to join us. Maybe we could just take a second, Representative Ramel, if you'd have anything you'd like to share with us before we get into the details here.
Oh, thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. I don't know that I have got any sort of like big prepared remarks ready for you today. The question that was in my mind looking at this, I guess two questions. I will do my best to join and participate when I can. I won't be able to join this committee on a weekly basis, so I am curious to just understand what the best way to sort of remain apprised of the sort of outcome will be. And in particular, we had a bill the other day in front of the House where there was a slight touch on the, the code council. And I just wanted to make sure that it's, that the regulation would be implemented and the timeline with the rest of the code updates. So when I've got those kinds of questions, I want to make sure we know sort of what the communication channel is there. And then the second sort of big question I have, Stoyan, is really just sort of, this is a lot of work that I see you putting into analysis for this bill. And I haven't seen what else you've worked on, but I would rate the bill on the screen right now's chances as between slim and none. And just wondering whether there's any process for sort of waiting until a bill has a hearing scheduled, for example, as a way to sort of save yourself a little bit of time and energy.
I do this for DES anyway. So when the bill is introduced, so this is the first week, again, the first and second week, they're always the busiest ones. So I receive the bills, I do the analysis, and then when the bills start, the amendments, it's easier because I'll go back to the initial analysis and I can make the changes. So I do it anyway. It's a little bit extra work to put everything from the form I'm using for DES and incorporate it here, but I'll have it anyway.
Okay, as long as you've got extra time to do it.
Well, I don't think I have extra time with all these off-cycle rules that you overloaded me a little bit, but I mean, I try to take these bills positively. I mean, I may not like it, but it's always something you can find in a bill. So, and this is not a council meeting; it's a committee that we can discuss and even chat about, those bills. So,
I mean, I guess the feedback I would give, the suggestion I would make is, a bill that's introduced and a bill that has as soon as it has a hearing, that means somebody thinks that it could move. But if a bill hasn't had a hearing scheduled, oftentimes those are bills that are introduced to send a message.
okay. I will remember that.
Hey, it's Anne here. Sorry, I'm just leaving campus. And so I appreciate that, Representative, for the agency and for being that we're a cabinet agency, we do analyze most bills as part of our policy. So, but I hear you, and we typically prioritize the bills that are coming up for hearing, but we, as an agency, state agency, do analysis on all the bills that are dropped in. But definitely, it's a very good point. I apologize that I'm late. It's just coming from a couple legislative meetings.
Anne and I, we were talking about, sometimes the analysis, I don't know if Anne wants to jump in now or later or next week, but, when I do the analysis, so sometimes the position that DES has may differ from the position that the council will take. And even with the council is divided. So, a few council members may have one position and a few council members may have another. And the recommendation that I'm following, the recommendation from the council is the council is neutral. The council staff is neutral when analyzing the bills until the council give me a different direction. And this is what I'm doing. And Anne was concerned that sometimes based on fiscal impact and other things, sometimes it may be important to oppose a bill. I don't know, Anne, if you want to talk about it now. Or...
Yeah, I think, and thank you for that. It's a challenging thing when we have folks that are talking about out of coal. We're going to have fiscal notes associated with things, and some of these things not being part of the governor's budget, they may have a staffing impact or a resource impact. And for the most part, DES has stayed neutral on these bills, taking kind of the State Building Code Council has been pretty much neutral on most of the bills, but we want to be in a place where we're really articulating the impacts, in particular the fiscal impacts, when we have the State Building Code that is still not fully staffed, just to let folks know that we're not, that there are definitely going to be impacts when we do this type of work. And I'm planning on having a meeting with the governor's office just to see how we can be better about that, because we've got a lot of legislative proposals, governor request proposals, and sometimes they're at odds with one another. And how do we best get on the record in a neutral way to talk about how we would implement the legislation and what kind of real impacts that would have? It's almost just going on the record more often with those general administrative tasks about fiscal impact, staffing impacts, that type of thing. And we've typically remained pretty quiet about that. So just something that I'm thinking about. The position would be more on the Department of Enterprise Services and those impacts versus like the State Building Code and the position that they have, which is typically neutral in a lot of these pieces of legislation.
Great, thank you all. Soin, yeah.
Okay, so following in Representative Romel's a comment. So the bills you see here, when a bill is on the first page or on the second page, I don't group the bills by importance. I group the bills based on the time I receive the bills for review. So I think this is also good to clarify. I have my opinion on bills, but I don't get into politics, so I don't have favorite bills and less favorite bills. And everything you see here, again, it's based on the time I'm receiving it. Okay, so SB 5037, it was pre-filed, and the prime sponsor is Senator Linda Wilson, who is ex officio, the council member. And here is the bill summary. Section 2 is important. It adds a new mandate for the State Building Code Council, specifying that the Energy Code may not prohibit the use of natural gas. You all know where it is coming from. I don't want to spend much time on it. And then Section 3 is important also, well, based on how it reads. Requires the Secretary of State to submit this act to the people of Washington for their adoption and ratification, and so on. So again, this is the brief summary. I'm providing the link to the LECH website so you can access it. The dates are here. It was pre-filed for introduction, and it was referred to the Environment, Energy and Technology Committee. I have policy impact uncertain because it's difficult to predict, and these are again very basic notes why we have it as uncertain. The fiscal impact will be huge for many reasons. If you want me to talk about it, I can. If you don't, we'll keep it this way. So this is all I have for SB 5037. And of course, if you have comments, questions, feel free. I'm here. I like to talk. So anything you need, I will do my best to provide.
Yeah, thank you. I think feel free to just keep going and everyone use the raise hand features. This is an open meeting, so
I have 2 more bills I need to add to this summary, and I'll do it this afternoon. I just didn't have time to complete the analysis. I'll do it this afternoon, and this summary will be available for you. It's updated version. Okay. 5117. So that's SB 5117. Again, Senator Wilson and other senators, and it's a long summary. It looks like an interesting bill. I'm not going to read everything here, but what it is, it changes the State Building Code Council policies and procedures, but not in WAC 5104. It proposes policies and procedures in RCW 1927. I spent a few days on this bill. In my personal opinion, there are things that I don't see how they will work, but there are also some good language that I was my intent was to use some of these ideas and introduce them into the State Building Code Council policies and procedures. Again, long summary because it's a long bill. Again, the link is provided. The next important date is January 20th. It's scheduled for public hearing in the Senate committee, and it's scheduled for 8 o'clock a.m. But it's possible that this may change. Okay, again, this is an interesting bill if you want to attend the hearing or just watch it. Here is the date, January 20th. Policy and operational impact for SBCC, it's a major impact. And this is a general statement because it's based on the entire bill, okay? But there are different sections in the bill that some are intended to streamline the process based on how we receive the proposals, how we move the proposals forward, how the council adopts the proposals. Others are making some changes to the council, State Building Code Council authority and other stuff that, again, I recommend you read the bill and you can analyze it. This is the staff opinion, okay? So for policy and operational impact, if the bill is enacted, it most likely it will require major changes to WAC 5104. And the fiscal impact is more than 50,000. I don't have the fiscal note here, but the most expensive part was related to the cost-benefit analysis. If we are hiring third party to develop our cost-benefit analysis for our codes, it will cost a lot of money. Currently, our budget for the energy code only is $200,000. Todd, I see a raised hand, so if you wanna.
Oh, thank you. I missed it. Go ahead, Micah. And Sonia, go ahead and you can feel free to recognize hands as you're talking.
Okay.
Thanks. Stan, I appreciate your time on this one. I've read through this one several times. We do legislative work for the Washington Association of Building Officials and for the city of Seattle. So reading through this, I do have some concerns with it. One of the things I think may need to be added to your notes is section 3.1 with the removal of the 15-member language. That would actually add votes to the State Building Code Council. In other words, it would be made up of all those members, and all those members would be voting members. So the current ex officio members would then have votes. And I believe that is something that should be noted on there, is it would increase those voting numbers, in my opinion. I'm not a law expert.
Sorry, Mike, I just want to jump in here. I apologize for cutting you off. The bill proposes additional council member, 16th council member, and this is why this was reviewed. I was going to mention it a little later, but thank you for bringing this up.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, no, I think your analysis is really good. So I appreciate the time and effort. The other concerns I have with this, or not concerns, but I'm not opposed to some of the changes that Senator Wilson put forward in this bill, just based on previous discussions we've had where our bylaws and practices don't match the process we actually go through. And I guess the question will be, is that why you have that listed on our next council agenda as bylaws and policies? Are we going to be forming a work group to address that issue that we brought up in the past? And is this bill going to push us to do that a little sooner than later, hopefully? But there are some issues in here that I agree with your analysis that says, this is open-ended. Don't know, I don't know how we'd implement this. And then, quite honestly, some of the opening paragraph is almost a little offensive to council members, at least in my opinion. So thanks for your time on this one, but those were my two concerns. Thanks.
The agenda item for the council meeting next week was, it's not related to this bill. It was planned before. Jay is the next one.
Thanks, Joanne. And unlike Mike, I only had the opportunity to review this the 5 minutes before you had sent it. And certainly this bill has got a lot of changes, both in how the council is formed and how we do business. And the hearing on this is scheduled before the State Building Code Council will meet, and being able to say if there's something we want to do as a council. Given that, I'm a little concerned that given the complexity, that there may be some questions that legislators have about how we operate, how this bill would change how we operate, and the compare and the contrast of those things. Is staff available as a resource to be able to at least answer questions from legislators during that hearing, knowing that as a code council, we have not taken a position on this bill one way or the other?
If the council, well, that's a little difficult. I was going to say if the council authorized me to testify, but the council meeting is on, starts at 10 o'clock and the hearing is at 8 a.m. And we have a scheduled meeting with Senator Wilson, I think for next week. I can't remember the exact date.
Right. Is there a process through DES or others just to provide some information? And because I am concerned, and this would apply on either side, on how an advocate might characterize things versus how staff would discuss our operations and why we do things the way that we do and the impacts of changes.
If I may respond to that, Stein, DES does have a process where I'm monitoring the hearings, and if there are questions, we can provide technical response, but we wouldn't speak to things outside of technical questions on behalf of the State Building Code Council. So if that's the question, we would respond to a committee because we have folks that are monitoring that, but anything deeper than that, we're not going to take a position, if that's helpful. But Stein, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So is that happening through, thank you, Anne, is that happening through DES, or is that something where Stoyan or others on SBCC staff would be involved too?
If it's something about just the basic function of the State Building Code Council, I can work with Stoyan on providing anything that if folks are having questions about. If it's anything more than that, I wouldn't be the one to take a position about specific council positions, if that's helpful.
I did testify once without the State Building Code Council direction, and it was very technical without taking a position on anything. So that's my experience with this.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I think it would be helpful if you believe you have that flexibility to do so, even before the council has taken a position on a particular bill. Because this is complex and technical, and I think your analysis would be helpful to the discussion.
Representative Rommel.
Thanks. I would echo Jay's comment there. I think it would be helpful if you're able to attend. And even if you just say quite clearly, I'm looking to the council to get guidance on a position on this bill, which that vote hasn't happened yet. But I'm here to answer questions and expect an email from me, later today or early next week with the council's position. We just haven't had a chance to respond to it. I think that would be very helpful and give folks, a face and a name to ask technical questions. The question I was going to ask Stoyan is, or maybe Anne, did Senator Wilson reach out to you during the process of this and ask for your thoughts? Did you get a chance to look at a draft? I'm kind of buried in House bills only right now, so I hadn't seen this until today. But had you heard about this? Was that contemplated at all?
No, when we saw it, it was already a pre-file.
And that is why we're trying to get some time with her to just get a better understanding of her intent and just have some.
There was no email that said, hey, any unintended consequences that people who do this work every single day might notice? Nothing. That would be information that the committee should also hear about this bill.
Not during the development of this bill. Again, there are some provisions that I've been talking to council members for a long time, that the council needs to make a decision, like whether or not the council needs to make changes to proposals at the last meeting, or if we are having triennial code adoption cycle, then why we're having off-cycle rules every month, and how we receive the bills and format. Those kind of things are important. But again, we've been talking about this for a long time, probably a year before this bill was introduced. How the bill was developed, we don't know.
I just urge you to make that known to the committee that you were not involved at any point in the process of this bill, and nobody on the team, the people who do the work of managing and administering the code council on a day-to-day basis, nobody has weighed in on that. That's information the committee should hear.
Noted. Micah?
Sorry to come back. I really need to review my notes while I'm talking to you folks. Again, I'm not opposed to some of the stuff in this legislation. I think that a better path would have been to look to modify RCW 1927-035 as was done under engrossed second substitute House Bill 1622 from 2018 that just directed the SBCC to modify their process and policies for reviewing state code change proposals and enacting local amendments and stuff like that. So again, I think we're going to get there. This bill doesn't do it. So if we're looking for a direction, I don't think we should support this bill, of course, but I do support the need for changes in our policies and procedures. Thanks.
Todd, you're
Yep.
about here, so I don't.
Raising,
need to
raising my hand in
anything.
the medium, supposed to be
Yeah.
chairing, yes. So I wanted to wait in line, but this raises a question for me. So since the time I've been on the council, you know, we can't take a position until the council would take action and recommend that. And of course, we've discussed in the past whether, you know, say the council chair, committee chair would you know, have the authorization to represent us. But since this one's coming straight from an ex officiato, you know, member of the council directed to the council, this is kind of new territory for me. What stops one of our other ex officiato, you know, members from taking a position as an actual member of the legislature? So just kind of curious as a what if. I don't know who that's directed to, but obviously I just raised the question, Representative Ramel as a, you know, as a member.
Sorry, Todd, just make sure I understand your question. What would stop me or another ex officio member from signing on in support of this approach or
even testifying for that matter,
or testify?
since obviously one of our members is an author of yeah. So
Got it.
just raising the what if. Yep.
I think I hope you've heard in my comments that I won't be supporting this legislation if it comes over to the House, and if anybody on the Senate side asks me about it, I'll share that opinion as well. Senator Ludwig will, and probably, you know, the former ex officio member, Senator Wynn, will likely also get some questions from other senators about, hey, are you seeing these same kinds of concerns, or is this just Senator Wilson's opinion? They'll probably have some, in terms of testifying at the hearing. I don't think there's any legal reason we're not allowed to testify at the hearing for another member's bill, but it's not common practice.
Of course, thank you.
Jay?
I just want to make a note on members testifying. It is common practice for the sponsor of a bill to testify before committee about their bill. So I think we can expect that Senator Wilson will be testifying about the Building Code Council at this hearing next Friday.
I just looked up at my calendar, and we're meeting with Senator Wilson next Thursday. So by the time of the council meeting or the hearing, I will have some idea about, you know, how this bill was developed. Currently, I haven't spoken to Senator Wilson. I just again saw the bill when it was prefiled.
And Tony or someone else will represent the council in that meeting, or no, just DES?
In past practice, that there have been times I've been helping to support the State Building Code Council where we often had the State Building Code Council manager and often the chair that accompanied me to the legislative meeting. So that is an option if folks would want that to be the case, but currently it's just Stoyan and myself.
Okay. But you're open to a recommendation from council members to have representation? Thank you.
Okay, moving to 1085, reducing plastic pollution. You see the sponsors, the bill summary. The requirement for the State Building Code Council is in section 2. And this will require the council to adopt rules that will require bottle filling stations or a combined bottle filling stations and drinking fountain for each drinking fountain that is required under other provisions of the building code. So the language in the bill reads little difficult to read, but this is what it means. If a drinking fountain is required, then a bottle filling stations also will be required. And for this particular bill, then the sponsor of the bill took a different approach. We met with the sponsor of the bill. The initial date was July 1st, 2025, which would require off-cycle rule. You know me, I'm not a huge fan of the off-cycle rules, so we provided the information needed for the sponsor. What's the difference between the off-cycle rule and the regular rulemaking triennial code adoption process, and the date was changed to July 1st, 2026. There won't be any fiscal implications because we will align this with the regular code adoption cycle. So the public hearing was on January 10th, a few days ago, and I missed that, but it seems not a complicated bill. No fiscal impact. The impact on stakeholders, it may have some little more expenses for building owners, but these bottle stations, bottle filling stations are everywhere right now, and I haven't seen a single new project that doesn't have the bottle filling stations. So by July 2026, I think there won't be any fiscal impact on building owners. Representative Romel.
Thanks. Yeah, so this is the one that kind of triggered my other question, just about the best way to make sure that you're looped in on these questions. So it sounds like on this one, the timing of implementation dovetails with the timing of the implementation of the rest of the code. So there's no off-cycle question here. If there is a way that, as I'm keeping an eye on those things, we can be in communication about the, making sure that there's no unintended consequences, I'm very open to supporting in that way. Just let me know what works.
Okay, yeah, sure. And if I don't see something, well, Mike, I was going to ask Micah, but he's raising his hand. So yes, Micah.
Sorry, our group is heavily involved in the national changes or national level changes, and I need to go verify, but I'm almost certain there are already some language modifications to bottle filling stations and bottle filling station requirements coming for the 2024 International Base Code. So this legislation may be moot anyway at that point, but I'll have to re-verify that with you, but I'm almost certain that we had some significant changes going at the national level for 2024.
We will verify that when we start working, and we'll evaluate the new model code anyway. So if it's already adopted, we don't need to do any extra work.
Yeah, it shouldn't take me long to get that information. One of my team members at Seattle sponsored that change in code language at the national level. So
That's great. Micah, will you email me about whatever you find on that, please?
absolutely.
And specifically, if it's harmful to include it here, if it's probably going to happen at the federal level, but not certain, we may still want to have that backstop.
Okay.
Micah, do
No
you know
problem.
the time frame? So the 2024 codes, they're not adopted yet. I can't remember when was the last meeting. When was the last? Was it April?
They did complete the online governmental consensus voting in December. And at this time, the ICC is working to verify all the ballots and certify the results. So I would assume that within the next 6 months, you'll have certified results indicating the, all the adopted changes that went through at the national level. And then I want to say it's usually about another 6 months after that before they start producing drafts of that 2024, the next code at the national level. So anywhere from 6 months to a year from now, we should have all that information.
Okay.
Thanks.
1193. Affirming that the legislature has not provided authority for the State Building Code Council to use greenhouse gas emissions as a consideration in residential building codes or energy codes. It's not a long bill. I have all important stuff right here, but I think the title says a lot and enough. Again, I have the links here. I didn't attend the January 10, but it was referred to the environment and energy. Policy and operational impact major, because everything needs to be revisited. We need to start from scratch. Fiscal impact is more than 50,000. It would require adoption of off-cycle rule, and that could be will be a difficult off-cycle rule, because again, it's not only deleting one or two sections. It's the energy code. All sections are related, so we need to revisit the entire code. This is why the fiscal impact is more than 50,000. It most likely will require some special meetings. Impact on stakeholders, major. The Commerce Clean Building Program and how this would interact with their existing building standards. So again, several things are connected. So it's not only delete one or two sections, it will trigger more work, not only for SBCC, but for our state departments as well. And this is all I can say about this bill. Again, very brief summary. (1105) requiring public agencies to provide notice for public comments that includes the last date by which such public comments must be submitted. We are already doing that. We follow the requirements in the administrative procedures, in the administrative procedure code. I think we already meet this requirement, so I don't see any impact on SBCC. Uh, 1298, increasing the supply and affordability of condominium units and townhouses as an option for home ownership. The first reading was on 11th. I strongly recommend you read section 13 of this bill. In my personal opinion, it sounds like a good intent, but how it's written, if the SBC, it exceeds the current SBCC authority and obligation as we see it in 1927 and 1927A. So this bill will require, I'll go back to the summary, it will be required to adopt building and energy code provisions for multi-unit residential buildings between 2 and 12 units. So this is the first, in up to 3 stories. So this is the first part of it. but it includes approval of variety of complete building designs and styles that are comparable in size and form with the single-family neighborhoods. Again, I see a good intent in this, but how it's written, I don't know how the State Building Code Council can do that. And it's unclear, there is no implementation date. It's unclear if the State Building Code Council needs to develop this. These are pre-approved plans, basically. This is what it is. I want to build an ADU, and I will use the pre-approved plan to build it. And all cities and counties are required to allow that. This is basically what this bill is about. But again, in the way it's written, it brings major impact on the State Building Code Council. The same with the fiscal impact. You see a big numbers here, and it's a very wild evaluation based on how much a single, if you hire an architect or engineer to design something, how much it will cost. And why I have it that expensive is because the intent, as I see it in this bill, is one size fits all. Well, we have different design criteria throughout the state, and I spoke with the Department of Commerce, and I think I spoke with the sponsor once, and I think the intent was to design one, to have the plan, and the plan will use the worst case scenario, talking about the design criteria, and then it can be applied throughout the state. But again, as an idea, it's not bad, but there are many details that must be taken into consideration. Again, that's the staff opinion, not a council opinion. Impact on stakeholders. I see many cities and counties. I will use Olympia. Olympia has pre-approved plans for ADUs. And many cities and counties, they have these pre-approved plans for single projects, which makes sense. I don't know on a statewide basis how we can make it work. Again, staff opinion, not the State Building Code Council. Todd, I feel a little nervous when you're.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Micah, go ahead, Micah. Yeah.
Did you have something to say, Todd, before I
Well,
get
I
into it?
No. I think I'm just making Stoyan nervous in terms of managing this meeting. But Micah, I do have questions for you. I want to hear what you have to say, and for this bill, and then also for 1167, which is has some kind of similar thoughts here. But go ahead, Micah.
Yeah, I haven't analyzed this entire bill. And I agree with Stoyan. Section 13 is a real problem. I actually think it will defeat the intent of the bill to try to do this. Stoyan mentioned the pre-approved plans. Seattle, yes, we have pre-approved ADUs as well. However, they're not just, hey, it's done, here, go do it. Each individual site still has to be analyzed for the foundation requirements and other structural standards, although the design, the wood frame portion of it is pretty standardized. But again, that's one jurisdiction that has their design criteria. And for folks that don't know the codes that well, the residential code allows each individual jurisdiction to mandate or outline their own design criteria based on topography, climate, wind, seismic, all those things. So something that works in Seattle is definitely not going to work in Spokane, because we're a seismic zone D. Spokane's a seismic zone B. You already have cheaper and more affordable housing costs in Spokane just based off of that one item. So it's, I honestly, this would defeat the purpose or intent of their bill if they had something that they tried to standardize, because if you're going with the most restrictive, then it's going to be the highest cost. Then I don't think everything is taken into account, because we have the Wildland Urban Interface Code coming that some people are in it, some people are out of it. So again, if you're designing to the most restrictive, parts of that WUI code are 1 hour construction, which that's not needed everywhere. So again, I think this would just defeat the purpose. And I understand some of the intent of getting more housing and more affordable housing, but this is not the way to do it. The standardized plans are not functional on a statewide basis. Thanks.
Yeah, and maybe I'll follow up and continue this conversation when we get to 1167, because I was kind of curious if these are meant to align a little bit and solve more of the energy and building code problem, obviously, which is appropriate. I think to your point, Micah, this starts to step into development and design standards and guidelines, so forth. That's the fuzzy area that I think we would be challenged with, obviously, as the building code council. But maybe when we get to 1167, we can talk about the context of what problem this one is trying to solve, and how that compares. Because does anyone know, were these two bills written in parallel, or they just happen to have some overlap?
Did you say 1167?
Yeah, and maybe that's not on your list.
For some reason, I don't hear it.
Well, maybe since I'm talking about it, I'll just raise a couple points. So 1167, and if anyone wants to speak to it as closer to the bill, so House Bill 1167, it is my understanding is also mentions pre-approved plans, and it's looking at missing many typologies. And Michael, this is where I'm not as well versed, obviously, as you are in tapping into the IRC, to get up to all the way up to 6 plexes, I believe. So that's why I wanted to get your reaction to that, since I only operate in the building code.
Yeah, I've had some preliminary discussions on that legislation before it was filed. It's a real problem. We could spend an hour just on that issue alone. I know there's some good intent there based on those discussions, but I don't think that everything has been thought through properly, and the real impact on that. I mean, it sounds great that you could build 6 units out of the residential code, but it defeats the entire direction that the national and even states have been going to, where it separates commercial code and resident 1 and 2 family dwelling code, where you don't have to go back over to the commercial code for certain provisions or construction parameters on these types of designs. So and there's not been justification on mitigating the risk when you start having these multiple units. I mean, it's a multi-unit structure that falls under the commercial code. Okay. And when you start trying to design that within the residential code and making it more simple, it's actually more complicated. And, there's a lot of pointers back to the building code itself. This type of legislation originated out of Tennessee, Memphis area. And what actually occurred there was the county put out some legislation trying to do this same thing. And what was not followed up on was that the state fire marshal actually shut it down and made them said, you can't do this. And they had to go back to, again, designing these multifamily structures out of the building code, which mitigates the risks that they've identified here over historical construction codes. So again, I agree with the intent. We need to do something, but yeah, it's really not the way to go about it. So,
and that's the exact response I expected out of you, Micah. So thank you. And so what we're finishing this off, where I was going with this is, I know what problem they're trying to solve on the development and planning side. So for those of us that are deep into development codes, this is a big barrier to some of our, including in other bills, let's say House Bill 1110, right, which is now a zoning code, and we're running into that transition from the IRC to commercial codes. So I was kind of curious on this one, Senate Bill 5258, if what the ask is. it's very similar. So I'll stop there, but and let others who might be closer to speak.
I think for 1167, and Micah will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had a discussion with the sponsor, right? In Micah's suggestion was a work group that can research this and potentially end up with a proposal. This is what I can recall. But again, I missed HB 1167. I'll get back to it. But based on what I've heard, then it's not. It doesn't talk about work group. It directly requires the council to do it.
And one last thing I'll say is I also understand the need for repetitive design, and obviously full transparency. You look over my shoulder, that's a very important topic in advanced manufacturing. So so if that's the ask, then I'd like to see a work group or one of our tags, inform this if possible. So Micah, go ahead.
Sorry, and again, I haven't had time to delve deep into it, but Stoyan, the legislation actually does point out a work group, but it goes further than that and almost mandates that this occurs no matter what the determination from the work group is, and it redefines some stuff. I think the legislation, again, has some merit. I'm just not certain if we can get there with what they're wanting to do. And that's kind of where, that we have to draw a line or figure it out. But it does have the work group the language in there. And that's really the direction of the SBCC. But some of the other parts of it are a real problem. But this proposal or the legislation on from this is not new to the council. We did have a code language change submitted to the council and went through the tag process that tried to do this. It tried to make a multiplex structure, as they're calling it, housing that allowed up to 6 units to be constructed directly out of the 1 and 2 family dwelling code. And so that was, I want to say it was unanimously voted down at the tag and the BFP committee and thus at the council. So it's really not a new concept necessarily for us to review, but I think the indication there is they kind of want us to convene a work group to see where this goes, but the outcomes may not be what they want. So definitely one to review. Thanks.
So SB 5119, it has a companion bill, HB 1110, increasing middle housing in areas traditionally dedicated to single-family detached housing. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to do the analysis on this bill, but I can bring it here.
This is the companion to House Bill 1110, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So that's the section that I personally was having a hard time with. Any city subject to, well, you can read it.
I can speak to it. I mean, just stepping down as president of Plan Commission Spokane, we're under emergency ordinance essentially for this right now. So this is what we've enacted, and now this is the state considering similar. So really more of a development code and planning, but it is one of the triggers that's informing those other building and life safety asks, I think.
Well, what it was unclear to me. So when it says objective development and design standards that don't require or allow personal or subjective judgment by a permit administrator, is it how it reads? It's like, any code compliance, any plan check or inspection, it's subjective. It allows interpretations. So how it reads, I personally, again, I didn't have enough time to evaluate, but how it reads, it's kind of.
Yeah, in my experience, and especially I know in Spokane, I mean, the development standards and design guidelines are outside the life safety code. So this is really directed more towards a planning and development director than, but not review of, but anyone go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I think I was going to say the same thing. I think this is, and we're looking at this particular bill in our city as well, city legislative process as well. And it's, we read this as more focused on design review, especially when you've got an external design review board versus anything that a planner would say, okay, here's buffers or building heights or other things, that tree code, other things that are more objective.
And Micah, 1 second, that there is another bill, House Bill 1026, that is directly dealing with design review by a appointed board or commission and saying it shall be administrative review. And then this gets to the nuance of objective or subjective discretionary review by that administrative decision. So anyway, Micah, go ahead.
Really, the concern for me on this and the other bills that are, the one we just talked about as well, is they are defining middle housing, and that can be up to a sixplex. So in other words, they're taking small apartment buildings and they're really, really modifying either land use code or even building code on that is way out of the historical practice, and there's no mitigation of that risk. And that's kind of my biggest concern, is that middle housing definition does affect not just land use, but also building code, and where we can land on that and what practices or policies we can enact, whether it's through land use or construction code. So I think that's probably the one small definition is probably the biggest impact overall on all these different legislations, because they are trying to define middle housing, and it is really outside of the current code structure for what we enforce. So thanks again.
Well, this was the last one I had for today, and then I need to add HB 1167, and I need to finish this because I didn't have time to review it.
Stoyan, is there, we meet at 10 o'clock on, for the council next Friday, and there is that other hearing at 8 a.m. We're not intending to meet as a legislative committee before, if possible.
If you want to meet earlier than the council meeting, I can work on it.
I put it out to the committee. I guess that would mean we would potentially meet on Thursday, just in case there's anything that comes up and we'd want to bring forward to the council. Any preference there? No.
It's not a question for me, right?
No, it can be, but also mainly for the committee members. Yeah.
I think it's probably a good idea, at least to get something on the calendars for us, because things change week to week. And so it'd be helpful to be able to do that update.
I agree. Let's put it on the calendar, and we can back out if we need to.
Agreed, since my calendar fills up and gets stacked quite rapidly. Thanks.
So you said Thursday, January 19th, right?
Yes.
What time? 11?
It's fine with me, unless someone has. Yep. Just keep it easy or consistent.
Okay.
I'm already double booked, but I'll see what I can do.
Okay. Well, that being said, we can move in, Micah. We can pick anything. 10 a.m.?
It's not a problem. If it, usually earlier in the morning is better for me,
Okay.
especially on Thursdays. But again, I'm not the end all be all. And I just wanted to apologize for folks that said this would be a quick meeting. I don't think that's ever the case when I'm involved. So thanks.
No, we said Doug pushed quick meetings. We're not on that regime. Okay, 9 o'clock? Anyone? 9 o'clock Thursday?
That'd be fabulous.
Okay. Date and time certain. All right. Okay, with that, is anyone else have anything for the good of the order?
Yeah, if I may, it probably would be helpful if you guys were to do a standard legislative meeting. Most of the state building code council bills are heard on Friday morning. There's a state government on both the House and the Senate on Friday mornings at 8 o'clock. And that's a lot of the times where the building code bills are heard. So a Thursday is a good time to, if you wanted to have discussion prior to those Friday meetings. They also meet other parts of the week too, but just to not have overlap during that committee, if there was something that folks wanted to listen into, that's a place where I'm actually sitting into most times.
Okay, good point. Yeah, maybe that becomes the new normal this session. Okay,
So,
thank you.
If this is the case, then can we switch instead of Friday? We can switch to Thursdays?
I'm okay with that. Jay, do you have a comment?
I had a separate comment after we finish this schedule.
Okay. Let's try 9 o'clock on Thursdays until we get pushed back then, please.
Okay, and just one question for Stoyan is whether this bill log document will be able to be distributed to the full council. There's a lot of information in there to digest. And even I recognize that things change, but having that available and posted would be super helpful.
I was planning to post it on Monday and regularly updating it. So I'll try to complete it. Well, I will send it to you this Friday, today afternoon, if I have updates, but on Monday will be posted on the website for the State Building Code Council meeting.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you.